In sports, most interviews are white noise. A few polite sound bites, a little coach speak, then we all move on. But every once in a while, someone says something that strikes a nerve, and the whole fan base explodes. That's exactly what just happened with the Indiana Fever. One sentence from the team president, and Fever fans lost it. It was an international story. Comment sections went nuclear. The backlash was so intense, the Fever's president deleted her X account. But here's the part that no one saw coming. The clip that started all of this, it's not even close to the most important thing she said. In fact, if you're a Fever fan, the real story hidden in the press conference is way worse. For Fever fans, the hype going into 2025 was off the charts. New leadership, new coach, and what many called the best free agency haul in years. The Now You Know campaign, it wasn't subtle. It told the entire WNBA, this is our league now. Oh yeah, and they had Caitlin Clark, the most talked about athlete in all of women's sports. Rested, recharged, and by the looks of it, ready to take over. Expectations through the roof. This wasn't just a rebuild, it was win now, championship, or bust. And they started with a bang, destroying the sky on home court. Everything looked like it was falling into place. But then, reality hit. Caitlin Clark has missed nearly half the season with injuries. DeWanna Bonner, the veteran brought in to steady the locker room, she was gone after just 9 games. And the product on the court? Frustrating doesn't even begin to cover it. Some nights, they look unstoppable, beating contenders like the Liberty, Lynx, Dream, even the Aces. Other nights, they lose to the Sparks, twice. And when Caitlin is on the floor, the plan has been clear. Play her off ball, which, by the way, is the exact opposite of where she thrives, something she said herself multiple times. So let's recap. You promised a title run, you brought in vets, you hired a new coach, and halfway through the season, you're barely playing 500 basketball, while taking the ball out of your stars' hands. Yeah, fans are mad. And they're not just blaming the coach. They're looking at the front office, at the GM, and at the architect behind all of it, Fever president Kelly Krauskopf. When Kelly became president of the Fever in 2024, after 6 years as assistant GM for the Pacers, there was a ton of optimism. This was the experienced leader fans had been asking for. Someone who could build around Caitlin Clark and actually get it right. But now, halfway through a shaky season, that optimism is gone. And then this clip surfaces, and everything blew up.
Yes, we have a foundational player in Caitlin Clark and Leah Boston, and we're going to continue to add to that. But I want this team to be the leader in the country, and a brand, an enduring brand, like Apple or something.
The outrage was immediate, and it all centered around one thing. Caitlin Clark isn't just a part of the Indiana Fever, she is the Indiana Fever. And honestly, fans weren't wrong. Since Caitlin entered the league, the Fever's franchise value has exploded, up 273%. They're now worth $335 million, making them the third most valuable team in the WNBA. In 2023, Indiana averaged just over 4,000 fans per home game. Last season, that number jumped to over 17,000, a 318% spike. And it doesn't stop there. Last season, viewership rose by 170% on ESPN. But Caitlin's games, they didn't just contribute, they carried it. Her matchups made up 45% of the league's total broadcast value. Teams moved games to NBA arenas only when Caitlin was coming to town. Merch exploded, ticket prices skyrocketed, and every single franchise in the league saw its valuation double or more. Today, the WNBA as a whole is worth $3.5 billion. So when fans say Caitlin Clark is the brand, they're not exaggerating. She's not just the centerpiece of the Fever, she's the engine of the entire league. So if Kelly Krauskopf says she's building the WNBA's version of Apple, then Caitlin Clark isn't just the iPad, she's the iPhone, the MacBook Pro, the AirPods, She is the entire product line. And for that product to thrive, you don't keep it hidden in the break room. You put the ball in her hands and let her do what she does best: create. But this season, that hasn't been the case. Head coach Stephanie White has implemented a motion-heavy system that keeps Caitlin off the ball, despite Caitlin saying multiple times that she's at her best when she's orchestrating the offense. It's not just a strategic mismatch. It's been maddening for fans. Because when you ask a generational playmaker to wait for non-generational players to do the heavy lifting, you're not just misusing her, you're watering down the product. The offense stalls, the games are flat, and the Fever look like a team that doesn't understand what they have. If Caitlin were being put in a position to succeed, this controversy around Kelly's comments might have been a non-starter. But with the team hovering around 500, struggling for identity, and visibly limiting its biggest star, Kelly's comments landed like a slap in the face. Because for over a year, fans have watched as the media, rival players, and even parts of the league question Caitlin's stardom, that she's overhyped, that she hasn't earned it, that the league's success isn't because of her. So when the Fever president implies that the team is bigger than Caitlin Clark, it felt like just one more voice in a long line of leaders trying to downplay her value. And the backlash was instant. Fox News, Yahoo, the Daily Mail, the New York Post, everyone picked it up. But here's the wildest part, the part that no one seemed to notice. This wasn't a recent press conference. This wasn't from this week. It wasn't even from this season. It was from 2024. And that, somehow, makes everything worse. So I watched the full press conference. You're welcome. And honestly, given the moment and the momentum the franchise had at the time, Kelly said a lot of things that actually sounded pretty good. Fans were hopeful. The vibes were strong. And on the Fever's own YouTube page, their response was overwhelmingly positive. Over 950 comments, and people were calling her sharp, professional, and expert, and said she was the kind of leader the team needed. At the time, no one had a problem with what she said. But now that we've seen how things actually played out, that same press conference hits very different. Because buried in the middle of all the corporate optimism, there was one statement that's way more revealing than the Apple analogy. And honestly, it should leave every Fever fan scratching their head.
I see so many similarities in Caitlin and Tyrese, primarily because they control the tempo of the game. And we want to play almost identical to the way the Pacers are playing, or maybe they want to play like we're playing. But either way, it's, finding those right fits around a point guard like her is going to make us awfully dangerous.
What Kelly described there is exactly what fans wanted to hear. A fast-paced offense with the ball in Caitlin Clark's hands, creating for others, setting the tone. That's Caitlin Clark basketball. And just to make sure there was no confusion, she doubled down by saying how attractive Caitlin's style of play is to free agents.
I would think that if you are a smart basketball player and you watch the way she plays, you would want to play with her. She, much like Tyrese Halliburton, she gets you the ball in places that you didn't even know you were open.
So all of this begs the obvious question: what happened? Because what fans were sold, a fast, free-flowing offense built around Caitlin Clark, is not what we've been watching. Not even close. It's driven fans and analysts insane.
And how much grace are we going to give to a coach because the coach says, we're working things out for the rest of the season, we're trying to figure out our identity? Do you want to know what your identity is? You shouldn't need to figure out your identity. You have Caitlin effing Clark on your team.
And it's not just the play style, it's the personnel. Because remember, Kelly didn't just promise a system that showcased Caitlin. She said players would want to come play with her, that they'd attract the right pieces to build around her skill set. But let's look at who they actually brought in. DeWanna Bonner, the seasoned vet expected to bring stability, gone after 9 games, reportedly because of fit issues. Natasha Howard hasn't been horrible, but she seems to have trouble adjusting to Caitlin's playstyle. And what is she doing looking Caitlin off and carrying the ball up floor? She said she wanted to be MVP, and now rewatching this clip, you have to wonder what kind of role she was promised.
At the end of the day, the way Indiana came at me with everything they promised me and they keeping their promise. They sold me.
And this is where things start to get confusing. With the entire league watching, with free agents reportedly interested, with all the leverage in the world, the president and the GM, Amber Cox, brought in players that either don't match the system or don't match Caitlin. So what was the actual plan here? What was the pitch? What kind of basketball were they selling to the players? Why aren't we getting Caitlin Clark basketball? That question leads to what many Fever fans see as the most concerning part of the whole equation: the coach, Stephanie White. Because if the president says you're building around Caitlin, you'd think the coach you hire would reflect that vision, right? Someone who'd unleash their full skill set. Someone who'd build a system that fits her like a glove. So I went back and watched Stephanie White's introductory press conference. And yeah, Fever fans are going to feel like they've been lied to again.
More than anything, we want to continue to be exactly what they are: a fun, fast-paced, up-tempo style of play.
So let me get this straight. Kelly says she wants to play like the Pacers, fast, modern, and built around Caitlin. Stephanie says they want to play just like they did in 2024. No wonder people were excited. It all sounded great. Everyone was saying the right things. They sold fans on Caitlin Clark basketball, on a system tailor-made for her generational game. And honestly, even Caitlin bought in. She was super supportive of her new coach and teammates. But now, even she seems frustrated.
Steph has talked about kind of taking some pressure off you with Gary kind of running point in some actions and you playing off the ball. Just how do you think that will help when you reintegrate onto?
Yeah, I mean, it'll be nice probably not to have to bring the ball up against pressure 94 feet. But like I said, that's what I'm best at. So we're still going to do a lot of that.
Now, this is what disagreeing with your coach sounds like in the media. I understand where you're coming from, but I need the ball. And it's not just fans who are picking up on it. There's real concern that Stephanie White either doesn't trust Caitlin enough to hand her the keys to the offense, or just doesn't want to play that style at all. And when you listen to how Stephanie White talked about Luka Doncic while doing commentary for a Mavericks game, that worry starts to make a whole lot more sense.
When you see the Mavs just play differently without Luka on the floor, he's a guy who's high usage rate, the ball's in his hands. When he's not on the floor, that ball is moving, it's popping, multiple players getting involved in action, and everyone's stepping up.
You can hear it in her voice. She doesn't love offenses that revolve around a single player, even one as gifted as Luka. So if she didn't love it for Luka, why would she embrace it for Caitlin? Because that's not what we're seeing. We're seeing a system that keeps the ball moving, just not starting with Caitlin. A system that values structure over improvisation. And that brings us right back to the clip that set the whole thing off. Let's be clear. Yes, the press conference is 9 months old. Yes, fans were optimistic when they first heard it. But that's what makes it worse. Because now that the clip has resurfaced, we have an opportunity to revisit everything that's been promised. And now that we've seen the product, now that we've seen the system, the coaching, the decisions, that clip doesn't feel like an out-of-context soundbite. It feels like a broken promise. Fever leadership told the world they were building around Caitlin Clark. They said it would be a fast-paced, Pacer-style offense built to run through her. They said they'd attract players who wanted to play her style. They said the coach would bring pace and tempo. And now, we get to hold them to that. Because unless they were lying through their teeth, and I don't think they were, this is a case of them bringing in players and a coach they were familiar with, but not ones who necessarily fit what made Caitlin and the Fever successful. And that raises a much bigger question. If they can't match the vision they sold, can they really build around the most important player in women's basketball? Kelly Krauskopf can talk about building the next Apple all she wants, but Fever fans know the truth. They're not just Fever fans, they're Caitlin Clark fans first. If leadership strategy doesn't work, and Caitlin leaves the Fever down the road, the Fever go back to the dark ages with half-empty arenas. Caitlin's fans will follow her wherever she goes. The Apple dream is over. That press conference may be old, but it just opened a brand new door, and Fever fans still have every right to walk through it and question everything.